So when, for example,
they're represented very badly
for example, when women have their hijabs pulled off and they're spat on, when people are called terrorists just because they have a beard,
when women taking their hijabs off in Iran are grabbed by the police and taken into jail.
We're talking about freedom of speech and living in the UK.
And where are the feminists on that subject?
Okay, so
where are these bloody bleeding heart liberal feminists when it comes to women being persecuted in Iran for taking off their hijabs? Where are the feminists there?
Don't you think that your behaviour is indicative of the very behaviour that you're condemning? No.
Then let's go and have a conversation over there.
Why can't we have it here? Please don't be so hateful.
It's wasting of time.
Don't be so hateful. You're very hateful in your speech.
I'm hateful to Islam. Free speech that we have here. You probably don't have that where you're from, but we have it here, and it's very important.
No, it is. But don't you think
numpties like that coming and saying you can't say that?
But don't you think don't you think your language is just as much
I said umpa, stick it up your jumper. That was my language. So was that offensive? Was that swearing?
No, but what I'm trying to say is that when you make comments like...
So you're not talking about that, you're talking about something else?
Generally, it's your statements about Muslims being violent, Muslims doing this, Muslims doing that.
I don't see Scientologists doing it, I don't see Hindus doing it, I don't see Sikhs doing it, I don't see Jews doing it, I don't see Christians doing it. Unfortunately, not you, but I see Muslim brothers of yours doing it on a weekly basis.
Now,
and why don't you tackle that?
Okay.
You're spending your energy discussing it with me. Why don't you spend that energy discussing it with those Muslim brothers that you have that are violent, that are intimidating, that are threatening?
First of all, Islam teaches us a very important principle in the Quran.
Don't criticise your brother in front of the kafir.
No.
That is one of the points, isn't it?
You have to allow me to speak.
Do I?
Well, you said we're civil and we want to have a conversation, we want to have freedom of speech, right? So let's abide by that. Are there some Muslims who behave very badly? Yes, of course there are.
At Speaker's Corner on a weekly basis.
Everywhere, all over the world.
True.
But there are Christians who behave badly all over the world. There are Buddhists who are behaving badly in some parts of the world. Do I say all Buddhists are like that?
Did I say all Muslims are like that?
No, but that's
I did not, did I?
No, but
I did not, did I?
No, but
I didn't even infer it.
Your insinuation is that somehow this is an inherently Islamic Muslim problem. And what I'm trying to explain to you is...
At Speaker's Corner,
let me just finish.
yes.
Let me just finish.
At Speaker's Corner, which is where we're standing, yes.
Well, I've been...
You saw it there.
Okay, I've been threatened by non-Muslims, but do I look at all non-Muslims as threatening
Can we go into
violent?
the detail of when you've been threatened by non-Muslims?
Well, coming up very close, and I've had to ask the person, do you mind? Are you trying to have a fight with me?
Examples?
Have you tried to...
People coming up
I'm just
close.
giving you an... No, and acting aggressively.
That's a free mate.
Acting aggressively. No,
coming up close is not...
My point.
Not a phrase.
No, but also, look, life does not revolve just around Speaker's Corner.
You verbally threaten them with violence.
No, but hold on a second.
They're not standing close.
Okay, but life does not just revolve around Speaker's Corner.
That's what we have to tell ourselves.
Hold on a second.
Believe me, the way Islam presents itself at Speaker's Corner,
Can I finish?
I go home every week telling myself, as I said to people many times, I have to tell myself they do not represent Islam. That's what I try and tell myself every week.
So when, for example,
they're represented very badly
for example, when women have their hijabs pulled off and they're spat on, when people are called terrorists just because they have a beard,
when women taking their hijabs off in Iran are grabbed by the police and taken into jail.
We're talking about freedom of speech and living in the UK.
You brought up the subject of hijab, so I thought I'd bring up the subject of the way women are being treated in Iran today that choose to take their hijabs off. And where are the feminists on that subject?
So
where are these bloody bleeding heart liberal feminists when it comes to women being persecuted in Iran for taking off their hijabs? Where are the feminists then?
Okay, so now you're moving the goalposts.
You brought up the subject of hijab. Let's go back to what you were talking about.
The subject that I brought up about the hijab and about women being assaulted was in relation. Hold on. In relation to you saying that in England, in Speaker's Corner, this freedom of speech is not being respected by some Muslims who are behaving badly or aggressively. So we have to suffer that aggression as well. Hold on a second.
Not here.
So, but do we live in an isolated situation in terms of our reality,
So
as
at
in
some
just
point you
Speaker's
say, well,
Corner?
we can't talk about Iran, we must talk about Speaker's Corner.
No,
But when we talk about women having a hijab torn off, and I've not actually seen any evidence of that.
Oh, so it's not happening.
Tell Mama website talk about it, but
Right.
all Tell Mama's website stats are based on are bloody people tweeting.
Okay, so
quite frankly.
So I have relatives, family members, I have friends who've also recorded incidents where they've been spat at or they've been called terrorists. I have a good friend of mine who was called a terrorist on a train. He happens to own a very successful company, he's a very educated individual, and he confronted the two people who said that to him. So we do go through a lot as well, but do we say all non-Muslims are like that, or this is inherently a problem
And again, I
within
point
atheism?
out to you, at no point today or on any day have I ever said all Muslims are violent.
But your point is that this is
that was
somehow
your statement, not mine.
Your point
I
is
have never said that in my life.
Your point is that this is something inherent within Islam, Muslims causing problems, and nobody else causes problems, and that's a fundamental,
which is different,
a fundamental
fundamentally
lie.
different to saying all Muslims are violent.
Okay,
Fundamentally different.
But you negate.
They're completely different statements.
But you wish to.
You're trying to conflate the two, but you can't.
But you negate the swathes of evidence, I believe, where Muslims are suffering at the moment at the hands of many non-Muslims. And so this is inherently a problem.
We'll come back to the point. You wanted to concentrate on Speaker's Corner and behaviour at Speaker's Corner.
But
when you choose to, you bring in other examples.
My point
but I'm not allowed to do that.
My point to you is that when people behave badly, why is it that if they're Muslim, it's always to do with Islam? And when it's just behaving badly, then it's mental problems, it's socio-economic problems,
Shall I tell you why?
it's family issues,
Do you want to hear me why?
it's single-parent
Want to hear
problems,
from me why?
it's alcohol, it's all
he
sorts
doesn't
of
want
other
to hear
things.
from
No,
me
but I've
why.
allowed you to speak. You have to give me a chance as well.
You're doing very well speaking.
Right?
Shall I tell you why?
Please do.
Because in the 2 long years that I've been coming to Speaker's Corner, I think it's safe to say, apart from one drunk homeless guy that I once saw being violent here, the only physical violence, the only threat of violence that I've seen in that 10-year period, increasingly so over that period of 10 years, is from Muslims.
Right.
I am not saying every Muslim is violent. You're not a violent Muslim. That is self-evident.
Okay,
You are not a violent Muslim.
Okay, hold on.
But every example, apart from that one, in 10 years period, now, unfortunately, almost on a weekly basis, is from Muslims.
First of all,
that is why I'm saying what I'm saying.
first of all,
and I'm not saying every Muslim is violent.
Right. First of all, you have to agree that's anecdotal, what you've seen.
No, it's factual.
No,
Factual.
Well,
yes.
it's factual to you because of what you've seen,
So,
right?
so you're denying what I'm saying is not factual.
No.
What's your point of saying that's anecdotal?
Well, my point to you is this.
We can't talk about anything then, can we?
Well, now you have to give me a chance. My point to you is this. That whenever Muslims behave like that, many times I've seen fellow Muslims who've come, I have at times. At times moved it, well, when I've seen it. Because it's not as common, I don't feel it's as common as you say it is, but you say it is. Whenever I've seen an incident, I've stepped in and I've said, this is not the way to behave as a Muslim. Because in the Quran, as I mentioned to you, the verse that's in the Faculty of Law in Harvard says, O ye who believe, out of the Quran, O ye who believe, stand up as witnesses to God, even against yourselves, against your parents, against your kin, whether one is rich or poor. So if there is bad behavior, as a Muslim, even if it's myself or my parents, I have to condemn it. So if I see a fellow Muslim doing it, that's the principles that I try to abide by.
If only your Muslim brothers did the same. If only your Muslim brothers did the same. Because I think you might be in a minority.
No, but what you have to also understand is this. At the moment,
Did you hear that comment
no, I
from
didn't.
the guy with the mask
Look,
on?
at the moment,
You're a terrorist.
At the moment,
to me.
At the moment, what
So
you
that's a new one. I've had racist, I've had xenophobe, I've had Nazi. The most common one recently, hate preacher. The latest is terrorist. I have apparently.
Brother, 1 second. Brother.
Oh, he's back.
Brother, 1 second.
Steal the money.
Hey.
Now he's telling me to fuck off.
Brother.
Hello.
That's what I mean.
Brother.
It didn't take
Brother.
long to happen, did it? Go and tell him off.
I don't know who that person is.
Tell him off.
I don't know who that person
Go and
is.
tell him off.
First of all, I don't know.
How do you know
First of all, exactly.
How do you know he's Muslim?
Exactly. How do you know he's Muslim?
It didn't take long.
But how do you know he's Muslim? I don't even know who this person is.
Go and ask him.
Where
Go
is
and ask
he?
him.
Where is he?
Go and ask him.
Where is he?
Go and
He
ask
said
him.
what he's going to say, and he's gone.
I would put my house on the fact that that guy was Muslim. Go and ask him. I've said it on film. Oh, racist. What was that about racism?
You're a bigot, is what you are.
But you just said racist. Am I racist?
Because he's brown, he's a Muslim automatically. Yeah, that's
Well, you're Muslim, you're Muslim, you're Muslim. None of the three of you are the same race. You're different skin, you're different origin, you're different heritage. So what's it got to do with racism? Duh! Look, there's three Muslims here talking. He's one colour, you're another colour, he is another colour. I think you're each from three different continents.
1 second.
How is it racist? You see the nonsense of their argument.
second.
Because it's trying to silence any opposition,
can we have a
any
sensible
criticism
discussion?
by branding you as a racist. If you dare challenge them, yet look at their faces. They are all different races. Now shut up with your stupid playing the race card. You are devaluing the real battle against real racism. You are devaluing the real battle against racism across this planet by your pathetic playing of the race card. Scientologists don't do it. Hindus don't do it. Buddhists don't play the race card to any opposition. To any opposition. You're pathetic, and you will never silence. You will never silence the opposition. You will never silence the opposition. You are devaluing those people that have struggled against real racism by pathetically playing the race card. So whatever you do, put that race card firmly back in your pocket.
You don't want to let me speak. You don't want to let
They hate Israel. They obviously hate black people. Look at the slave trade in Libya today by Muslims in Libya today. Open slave market. That is the face of Islam in 2018.
In the world. English people.
Brother.
English people in Africa.
Here we go.
English people in Africa.
Let's go
Who
back.
stole the money
Let's go back 100 years, shall we? There's slave trades today of black people in Libya.
Steve.
Listen.
Steve.
Anyway, where were we?
Steve.
Where were we?
Everyone, 1 second.
1 second. This is a way
I know.
you shut down conversation. The way you shut down conversation, you shout a lot.
You have to talk louder.
Don't you think that your behaviour is indicative of the very behaviour that you're condemning?
What was my behaviour that
You're not having a conversation.
I'm being intimidating.
Yeah, you are.
You're not having a conversation.
I'm having a conversation.
You're shouting. No.
If you want a conversation, let's go and get coffee. We're in Speaker's Corner, in front of people, in front of cameras. If you want a conversation, let's go to Starbucks. Let's go to Starbucks.
You and I were having a conversation.
You can't expect it when there's a big crowd of people shouting in. You can't expect that.
No, but you're acting and you're behaving in the same way that you're condemning yourself.
No, because I'm not threatening any violence.
No, you are.
How am I threatening violence?
You're shouting over people.
It's not threatening
You're
violence.
screaming.
Do you know what threatening?
Hold on a
It's not
second.
threatening
You're
violence.
screaming and you're preaching. You're not having a conversation. Absolutely.
Someone preaching at Speaker's Corner.
You're not having a conversation.
You're not serious.
No. But we weren't doing a preaching session. We were having a conversation.
Should we carry it on over there?
No, we can
away
have,
from the people, away from the
we
cameras?
can have it here.
Or do you not want to do that?
I can do that, but let's
Because
have
you're
it.
playing to the audience.
No, not at
You
all.
are playing to the audience.
No.
Then let's go and have a conversation over there.
Why can't we
quietly.
have it here?
Because you're playing to the audience.
No, I'm not at all.
Really?
Let's
go and do it quietly over
Why?
there.
I'd like to have an honest conversation with you.
You're insincere, I think.
Not at all. I'm having an honest.
You two together.
I'd like to have.
You two together.
I'd like to
No, I
have.
don't mean romantically.
I'd like to have an honest conversation with you.
If you were sincere,
but a sensible
we
one.
could do that over there.
No, because I believe that you've said a lot on the camera.
So it is about the camera.
No, because look, people should all.
YouTube now,
Because
isn't it?
no, because
And that's
people.
what, one of the things that's gone wrong with Speaker's
You're
Corner.
going back into a
it's
monologue.
now all about YouTube.
No.
It's all about YouTube.
It's not about YouTube.
It's all about getting hits.
No.
It's all about getting
What it's
views
about.
and comments.
What it's about.
Which is why he doesn't want to have a discreet, normal,
I'll have a conversation
over there.
with you.
He wants it on the camera in front of the crowd.
I'll
It's
have
all
it-
about YouTube.
I'll have it
I thought
over.
you were better than that, to be honest.
Now you look, you're making assumptions about me and about
You
my
just said
intentions.
it. You just said
about
it.
my intentions.
You've said it. You want it on camera.
What I said to you is that
It shows you want it on YouTube.
You've made certain assertions, and you know that people who listen to that, there will be many.
Stop performing for
There
the
will be
camera.
many who will listen to what you have had to say, and they will accept it on face value. And so sometimes it's better to clarify these things on camera, so people
They need to clarify it by coming down here on a weekly basis and saying the threats and intimidation from Muslims. They want to come and see it in person.
Steve, the
Because
issue.
I'm identifying what happens here. That makes me a bigger. What land are you living on?
But did you know that guy was a Muslim?
You know.
No, I don't know. I don't
You couldn't
know.
even see his face. He had a balaclava on, you numpty.
He was brown. That's true.
He was that brown, actually. He was all your colour.
Okay, my colour, which is light brown, right? You
Can we compare and contrast?
You saw that. Well, I'm very cold, right? You saw that.
So am I.
And you automatically assumed that he was a Muslim, and that proved your case. That's called confirmation bias.
was.
That's called confirmation
That's why
bias.
he was shouting, because he heard what I said.
There are people here.
Don't make yourself
Listen
look
to me.
foolish by saying, "Oh, how do you know that person was Muslim?" You know as well as I do he was.
Well, I don't know.
So don't play silly games.
I've never seen that guy here before in my life. So how would I know?
This is a silly game.
No, look,
This really
my
is a
point.
silly
My
game.
point to you is this, Steve. That please don't be so hateful.
wasting of time.
Don't be so hateful. You're very hateful in your speech.
I'm hateful to Islam, not to you,
Right.
not to Muslims.
Right, but being hateful to Islam, if you're hateful to Islam and you dislike Islam,
I don't like fascism either.
I have no problem with
Can
that.
I be hateful towards fascism?
I have no problem with that. But let's have an intelligent conversation
What,
as
for the camera?
to why you hate Islam.
I've just realised you are actually mic'd up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely, because I think a lot of people who do hear these videos, they do go away and they listen to what you have to say, they listen to what the other person has to say, and then they can make up their mind as
So
to
what's
who
the
they
channel?
believe.
What's the channel?
EF Dawa. EF Dawa, yeah? My point to you is this. There are people who behave very badly, who are Muslims and who are non-Muslims.
No, you know,
The problem that you have,
we're talking
Steve,
about, again, we're
the problem
talking
that you
about
have,
Speaker's Corner, and I'm not letting you peddle the lie that there's people of all faiths and none who are being violent at Speaker's Corner, because that is self-evidently a lie.
What you
It is it is non-factual. It is incorrect.
Steve, what you have to
You cannot. You keep repeating yourself that all people are violent. At Speaker's Corner, which is again what you kept on focusing the conversation on, you do not see violence from people other than.
So when I was
Muslims.
threatened by a non-Muslim, you're saying that didn't happen?
That's anecdotal. That's anecdotal. That's meaningless.
Exactly.
Apparently.
Well, what I'm trying to say to you is that you don't build up an entire picture from the handful of experiences that you might have had. I've come here I've been coming here for 3 years.
Don't ask me. Ask Tam.
I've come
ask
here.
Sarah.
I've come
ask
here.
Sarah Garvey.
I've been coming here for 2 or 3 years, and I've probably seen 2 or 3 incidents which have been of a violent nature. You're saying it happens every week, and
who did those incidents involve?
Muslims and non-Muslims, in fact. Muslims and Muslims. No, look, you know.
So Muslim or non-Muslim
the problem that you have, the problem that you have is that you have
My problem or
the
your
problem
problem?
that we have, generally speaking, is that when these issues are discussed, and a minority of people do behave badly, and they're behaving out of the character of Islam, then automatically the assumption is, I hate Islam because that's what Islam does.
It's not the only reason I hate Islam, but it's one big part.
But yet, when Islam has had centuries,
many
when Islam has had centuries and
attitudes
centuries.
to animals, attitudes to homosexuals,
What's the
attitudes towards women.
what's the attitudes to animals?
Do we really want to go off?
No,
Well,
you mentioned
if you really
something.
want to. People that are much more expert on animal cruelty and the ways to treat animals and the way to kill animals, people that are much more knowledgeable than the likes of you are,
Yes.
you and I, so
Yes.
veterinary scientists, you know, the RSPCA, etc., etc.
Yes.
People that advise the British government,
Yes.
party politics that have come up with policy
Yes.
and then laws once they get elected,
Right.
decided what is the kindest, fairest way to slaughter animals in abattoirs.
Yes.
All of those experts, far more expert than you or I,
Yes.
concluded the way to do it.
Yes.
So that was the way the law was set up.
Yes.
Then along come trundle 2 groups.
Yes.
One Muslims, one Jews.
Yes.
Oh, we have these religious beliefs that we want to do it in a different way.
Yes.
That was in breach of the law.
Yes.
So what does the British state do?
Yes.
Okay, we'll roll over. We'll just let them do it the way they want to do it.
So do you think
Even
that,
though, and let's
Yes.
not start
Yes.
talking about a subject that you're not an expert on.
Yes.
I'm not an expert
Well, you've
on.
brought it up
Let's
now.
put our judgment in those people
In the
that
experts.
are experts.
Okay.
Who study the neurology of animals, understand the pain that another sentient being can sense.
Yes.
And the best way to deal with that, and when you're killing an animal, they've come up with a conclusion that non-stunned halal or kosher slaughter is not the right way, not the best way to do it.
Thank you for that question. Would you allow me to answer that now?
I've probably heard it before, but go on.
Are you aware of, because since we're dealing in science and we should always...
You're going to start quoting me scientists.
Hold on a second. And since we should base our opinions upon scientific research and experimentation and observation, are you aware of the Hanover study on halal meat? Okay, Hanover University did an extensive study on the halal, kosher and the stunning method.
And who was this group?
Hanover University. You can Google it.
Town.
Hanover University, right? You can Google it. It's on Google anyway. You can search for the experimentation that they did. And what they did is they got young lambs and goats and they implanted probes.
They didn't try it on pigs.
Can I finish my?
They didn't try it on pigs.
Can I finish my point? I let you speak.
This was an Islamic.
I let you speak.
Biased bit of research.
I let you speak.
They happened to do it on lamb and sheep.
So now you're going to trash the science.
Well, no, because there's.
Are you going to let me finish?
How do they know more than?
Are you going to let me finish? Are you going to let me finish? I let you speak. I let you speak. Let me finish. Let's be fair. So they injected probes into the animal's brain with ECG and EEG monitors. Okay? They let the animals heal over a month.
Heal from what?
From the probes being inserted into their brains, and then they slaughtered them using the halal, kosher, and the stunning method. Now, I agree. Let's go where the science goes. Their findings, Steve, quite alarming to you.
There's one university.
Hold on a second. Now you want to say it's only one university. It's scientific.
Because
hold on a second.
My sources are not one.
Can I finish?
Sources are.
Can I finish?
This is a scientific community.
This is a scientific.
Veterinary science.
Can I finish?
Neurology.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Finish yourself off.
Okay. So what they found, Steve, pay attention.
I'm still with you.
What they found.
No, I'm not. I can't promise.
What they found is that when the animal had its throat slit, with the Jewish method, the knife has to be so sharp that in one incision, the knife should reach the back of the jugular. In one incision.
When done correctly.
Hold on a second. Absolutely, of course. And it should be done by somebody who's trained, who knows what they're doing, not some Tom, Dick or Harry. The Islamic method also specifies that the knife has to be extremely sharp, and the incision was measured to be less than 1 second to reach the back of the jugular. What they found, that the animal almost...
You can't do that on a camel.
Hold on a second.
How can you reach the jugular in 1 second when it's a camel?
Let's be sensible and honest.
Cow.
Let's have an honest discussion here.
About little chickens.
Let's not be silly. Okay?
How is that silly? I've seen video footage of camels and cows being halal slaughtered.
You said scientific research. At least be interested in the research that I present to you. Otherwise, you're being disingenuous.
I wouldn't want to be that, would we?
Okay, so it reached the back of the throat within a second.
On what animals? You said sheep.
The sheep and the goats that they tested, right? They found that the animal almost immediately went into a sense of, or a position of being subconscious, unconscious. And the animal was seen to be still moving, exercising, to try to push the blood to its brain. The heart was still pumping. Because in Islam and in Judaism, we are instructed that if you cut the spinal cord of the animal, if you cut the spinal cord of the animal deliberately, the animal becomes forbidden for you to eat. So we have to keep the spinal cord intact. The pain sensory probes, the ECG and the EEG monitors, did not measure a spike, because what they found is that because it took less than a second for the knife to reach the back of the throat, the pain sensory nerves were severed. When you prick yourself or you cut yourself, it takes about a second or a second and a half for that message to reach your brain. But because the knife cut the jugular and the sensory nerves, the animals felt no pain. Now let's look at the stunning method. When you stunned the animal, they said that in a commercial setting, often it required sometimes more than one stunning. And they measured a very spike, a peak in the pain sensory probes, right, receptors, when they stun the animal. And the animal was in a state of paralysis. And the observation made, can I just finish first? The observation made was that because it looked like the animal wasn't feeling pain anymore, because it was paralyzed, it was okay. So there's a lot more to the science than you understand yourself, Steve.
But you're quoting one piece of research from one university.
But if somebody shows
all
me,
of the other.
but this is the beautiful thing about Islam, because Islam says that you cannot cause pain or suffering to the animal before you slaughter it. And that's why there's
it's the same rule that applies
why,
to beating your wife, isn't
that
it?
is why, let's deal with the slaughtering of the animal.
Another example of barbarism in your faith.
Steve,
That's the connection.
This is the problem when we have these sort of debates.
What? Someone chips in with
No, because you
someone
resort...
chips in with, the cameraman, the Islamic cameraman chips in with
because
something.
you have to move the
Maybe
goalposts.
that's the problem.
Because you feel
Can I just
compelled.
point out, the Islamic cameraman moved the goalposts.
This is why I find it very difficult to have these
Criticise him, not
discussions.
me.
Because when you try to have a sensible discussion,
Tell the Islamic
you see,
cameraman
if you were honest, Steve, what you would actually say to me is, Abbas, you know what? As a man of science and believing in science, that's quite profound.
Man of science.
At least because you said it. You said it on
When
camera.
I'm ill, I go to the doctor.
You've said
when
it
I
on
need to have
camera.
my eyes tested, I go to the optician. I go to experts in their field of science.
As people did in 15th century Andalus, they went to the Arab and the Muslim scientists.
What was the mortality
and
rate
the
there?
surgeons and the
How many
doctors.
women died in childbirth?
I mean,
what was the average
it's
age
ridiculous.
of guys?
Can you really have this
You're trying to
conversation?
compare hundreds of years ago and
This
say,
is
but they were
ridiculous.
scientifically knowledgeable. but most women died in childbirth. They died.
Steve.
No, because you're presenting something that is nonsense.
Steve.
Again, well, if it's a red herring,
Steve,
it was his red herring.
let me finish with that argument, and I'll deal with that one afterwards.
Deal with
so
what
what
argument?
you should say to me,
what was
Steve.
the average age of
So what you should,
death
Steve, you're missing the point, Steve.
Your
It
point.
was 15 centuries ago, and it was in relation to what the norms of science were throughout the globe at that time.
Why did you bring it up?
Because I brought it up to you that Islam has a rich tradition of science, of knowledge, of understanding,
went wrong?
of literature.
So what went wrong?
So that's another question now.
What went wrong with Islam?
We can
then?
discuss
It
that.
certainly isn't now, or the last 50, 100 years.
We can discuss that, Steve.
What went wrong?
But let's deal with the slaughter.
All modern day
Let's deal with the
inventions,
slaughter
all
first.
modern day
Let's not
inventions
move the
and discoveries
goalposts.
did not come from the Islamic world.
Steve, let's not move the
telephone,
goalposts.
The television, the internet. Any modern knowledge did not come from Islam. So you all harp back to the past.
Steve,
what went wrong?
What was modern knowledge
What went
15
wrong?
centuries ago?
Significantly
Exactly.
backward from what it
And
is
what
now.
what would modern knowledge be in 200 years' time, and which countries might have that modern knowledge? Would that make us stupid
So
today?
why did you bring it up?
Would that make our
Why did you
scientists
bring it
stupid
up?
today?
Why did you bring it
Do you
up
see how
then?
weak your argument is?
Why did you bring that argument up?
The reason why I brought it up is that Islam has a rich tradition
Why
of
did you need to
knowledge,
say that?
of science.
Why did you feel you
because
needed to say that?
Because your stance of I go to scientists and I go to people of knowledge to understand the world is not dissimilar to what Islam preaches and what Islam was
But
doing.
we were talking about slaughter. We were
Right?
talking about slaughter.
Yes, so let's deal with that. So when they did
you
this,
haven't dealt with it by bringing
when
up
they
one
did,
university's one piece of
well, it's a
research.
scientific
Sorry?
study.
Sorry, Islamic cameraman asking a question. Am I allowed to listen
brother,
to him
please, one
and
second.
respond? No, I'm not allowed to
It's
listen
an
to you,
Islamic.
sorry.
Listen,
You have to wait till after.
It's a scientific study, and if a person
Why?
professes, look, that's the beautiful thing
Is
about
it a
Islam.
peer-reviewed paper? You know, where is it published?
That's
Where was it published?
go on
Scientific America.
go
Where
on,
has it been
well,
published?
go on the internet and
Well,
look
just
at the study. Look at the study.
Darwa.com.
No. Go on Hanover University halal slaughter.
Yes, but that's not enough. Is it peer-reviewed? Is it in Scientific America? Is it in Nature?
My point.
Where has it been published? What
Steve,
journals? Where are the reviews of
Steve,
it?
my point-
You're not dumb enough
Steve,
to know
Steve,
a piece of scientific research,
Steve,
a paper, needs to be peer-reviewed. It needs to be
Steve,
published
my point to
in
you-
well-known sites like Scientific America, like Nature.
Steve, my point to you is this.
Has it or has it
I
not?
don't know.
Right.
Steve, my
Well,
point, Steve,
at least you're big enough to say so.
my point to you, Steve, is this though, that you discuss these things as black and white, as if somehow you are correct, and the Islamic tradition, the Jewish tradition of halal and kosher slaughter, however, is cruel.
There is an argument we should all be vegetarians and all vegans. It's not. I've never said anything is black and white.
And in fact,
it's a scale of what's better and what's worse.
And in fact,
on a scale of what's better and worse, halal and kosher slaughter are worse than the methods that our scientists and experts have decided is the best way. But it's a scale. As I say, the next step on that scale is that we should be vegetarian. The next step step on that scale is that we should be vegan. And we could stand and argue for those cases as well.
Are those scientific studies, Steve,
Of what?
saying that it's cruel?
What, halal, non-stun slaughter?
Yes.
Yes.
Where were they published?
Across the board, to the
Where?
point, Scientific American, Nature, to the point that the government decided,
Where
not just the
were they
British
published?
government.
Where were they published?
Give me a second and I'll let you know.
Oh, so basically,
you don't want to let me know.
No, of
I don't
course.
want to let you know.
By all means, no, go, investigate it. You made a point, but you yourself don't know where they were published. You're dealing with opinions yourself.
Argument of Muslims. It's like saying, do you know what page of the Quran that's on? You don't. Oh well, then it's nonsense. It's a pathetic, lazy argument.
So I have to give you.
Again, applied by Muslims.
I have to give you my argument where it was
because
published.
you were citing
and
one
who published
individual
it,
study.
right?
You were citing one
you don't know
individual
yourself.
study.
You don't know yourself. That's what we call hypocritical, isn't it? Really?
I know the British veterinary.
Okay, please find out where it was published. And what was
And then what will you do? And then what will you do?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. And this is the beauty about Islam. Islam is about lessening the harm to the animal. So if you can find a method that is least damaging to the animal and keeps the animal healthy for human consumption, then the scholars would say adopt that way.